Welcome. I'd like to start on time. In general, that's a practice of mine, to start as best I can to start on time. My name is Beverly Braxton. I'm the founder of We the People Warwick. And I was thinking about tonight and about what would I say to all of you. And it really occurred to me that I should just show up and say, I am you. I'm doing this not because I have some special talent or interest in being in front of people. I'm as fearful as the rest of you. And I thought I should own up to that. Every time I stand in front of an audience, I'm nervous. I'm fearful. I'm judgmental of myself. But that can't keep me from doing what I know that I can't rest with. And that is knowing that we can do better. That we are more than what we imagine ourselves to be. I have to show up because it's required at this time. And that's why I'm here. Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. And yes, I have the terror and the tremors and the, what am I going to say? And all the false stories about how brave I am. I'm not. But I know that I believe that we are bigger than what we imagine ourselves to be, and we are called to do something more than what we imagine ourselves to do. And so that's why I thought of We the People Warwick. Because we all matter. We all want to be seen, heard, and valued. And we also have something to give, whether we believe it or not. So when I started We the People Warwick, it's because I felt like we are the models for children. We are the adults. We have to do better. Our children care that we do better. So you can hear the passion in my voice. I taught young children for 30 years. How do they imagine a future where we as adults can't talk to each other? It's pretty scary for children, just like it's scary for children when their parents can't talk to each other. So I also want you to know that every person, or nearly every person who's speaking tonight, has the same tremors, the same fears, same anxiety. Are they going to be good enough? Will they remember everything they want to say? So nobody's standing up here perfected. Any one of you could be us. And so when we have speakers tonight, they're risking something that I've called for from them. Only one or two people called and said, hey, Beverly, I'd like to tell a story. Everybody else I dragged and screamed. Because I said we have to show up. Our stories matter, really. And as you will witness tonight, they will impact you. And they will awaken in you your own stories. So you don't want to hear from someone, oh, I can't do it because I'm scared. That's not okay. I mean, scared is not a thing that's real in the life of what it is that we're called to do. So I just want to say, thank you all. And those brave souls who will stand in front of you tonight, please cherish this moment from them and please congratulate them for having the courage. And I'm sure you'll be delighted by their stories. I just want to bring your attention to a couple other things about We the People Warwick. one of the things that we do, we're just ordinary people like you. I mean, there's only a few of us, but we come together and we think about, well, what has meaning? What has deep meaning for people in our community that would build connection, that would make us a community of belonging? And so, if you don't know more, if you want to know more about us, please pick up our brochure. It pretty much outlines everything that we aspire to do. Or not, it's not inspire, but we aspire to do. My girl Nancy is my other co-teacher. One of the things we thought of is that I wanted to remind people, and the committee I work with, we talked about one of the things we can forget in this world of technology that we lived in, that we were like absorbed by, is that we need to get back to ordinary kindness. Like, what does a kindness look like? And so we decided to start this initiative in Warwick called Be the Light. You know what it feels like when somebody helps you, opens the door for you, gets a package that you can't reach, that says hello to you when you don't know. You know what that feels like. That's a light that reminds you, wow, I'm seen and heard. Well, I'm just seen and noticed. And so I want us to kind of generate that in our own community, that each one of us can be a light in the lives of other people. And I value and welcome any light that anybody gives me. Another thing I wanted to bring, and so I'd like us, tonight could you start passing that jar around? In that jar, there's little actions where it reminds us of ordinary things that we can do to be a light in someone's life. Like, for instance, help a neighbor with yard work, with groceries, or errands. Put a note on someone's windshield to say, hey, hope you have a great day. Pay it forward. Go to a store and give an extra $1 for someone's coffee. It will do magnificent things in a human life. It will remind them of care and kindness. Another thing I wanted to say is that the whole premise of this is really built on the needs and the support of our community. We have no money. We rely on the donations of our community members who care about the work we do. So one of the things we did is we have a dialogue series, and one of our dialogue series was about using photographs to give voice or to acknowledge the values of our community that we care about. So we have, out of that process, we also created note cards. Like, if you're a writer, you write note cards, buy some of our note cards. We need the money, but also they're beautiful. They're also reminders about why we chose to live here. We also have what I think is a pretty cool thing called a Community is a Solution. It's a mug that kind of reminds us of all the ways in which there are members of our community working together to make Warwick what it is. And Jeff looks like he's going to hold that up for me. So if you are inspired, buy a mug just to remind you of what our community is. So thank you for listening to me. I'm really proud of myself that I stepped out and said, listen, I'm not who you think I am. I'm just as weak as the rest of you. Or at least I don't feel what people imagine it takes to stand up here. So tonight's story share is set up this way. Each person is given 5 minutes. We have someone in the back who's monitoring that. Nancy Nautico, can you stand up and just give them a sample of the red light that will indicate to them
For the speaker.
For the speaker. I think that happens like 30 seconds. 50 seconds?
15.
15? Oh, you're not so nice. 15 seconds before the ending of their 5 minutes. I randomly pick out names from a hat or a basket. Occasionally someone asks to go first, which is very rare. And one of those people asked to go first tonight because they have obligations at home. So I know who that person is. But generally we give 5 minutes for each speaker. We'll have a break, and after we have about 10, 11 speakers tonight, we'll break in the halfway mark. And I want you, really, with intention, to meet somebody you don't know. Just introduce yourselves. Just say how long you've been here. Just say what you love about Warwick. 3 sentences. Go home tonight knowing that you met somebody you didn't know before. Because that's really what this is about. We're not doing this just for fun. We're doing this to build community and the value of what that could do in terms of changing the quality of our relationships in our community. So, do we have any questions? Did I leave anything out? Oh, someone just said, have your phones turned off? If you can. And our first speaker is Roseanne Esposito.
So I have ADHD, so I have my own accommodation. I just found out I wasn't supposed to do this, but I did write it down, otherwise we would have been here for 25 minutes. Or maybe longer.
Oh, so
Does the mic have a volume control?
Point the mic at your mouth.
did I?
That's a good idea.
I didn't do that?
No.
Oh, I'm so bad. I'm really
I may not need the thank you. So.
No, you don't have a decision about that. I'm sorry. Chris, if you don't hear someone kind of give them the thumbs up. Chris is our video photographer there. Roseanne, start your story. And make sure that it's like an ice cream cone.
Point it at your mouth.
Where does she need to stand?
Right here.
Okay. So I travel back and forth from North America to Central America, and I use this book to help children discover their gift. And then one day I caught myself and I said, why is that so important to me? Why am I working so hard and traveling the way I am to help people find their gift? Because for most of my life, I had no idea what my gift was. And that's where my story begins, and I actually title it The Gift Hidden in the Struggle. It doesn't always show up as a gift with pretty pose and in a package. For me, it came disguised as failure, frustration, and disappointment. As an educator, though, I could look back at myself with a lot of empathy. I was the girl whose handwriting was never quite right. I couldn't print my letters. I couldn't sit still. I stared out the window, and I was supposed to be paying attention. In the 70s, that didn't work out so well. My fine motor skills were weak. I bored easily, and today I'd be labeled the child ADHD. But back then we didn't have a label. Instead, I was either slow or just never focused. So year after year, I met failure, and somehow I made it through high school. They checked boxes then. And then I failed out of my first year of college. And that could have possibly been the end of my story. But one day I signed up for a community college prerequisite English class, because that's all I could get into at the time. And I turned in my first essay. And I wasn't expecting my professor to tell me that it was the best in the pile. I will say that the bar probably wasn't so high in that class, but that was the moment that everything changed for me. It was the first time that I saw myself as being capable. But because before that, I only saw myself through the eyes of other people who judged me or graded me. So perseverance wasn't a word anymore that adults just threw at me that I needed to achieve. It became something that I lived. I went on, I earned my bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then eventually my doctorate, overachiever maybe. But really it was about reclaiming something I had lost, and that was belief in my own potential. Throughout my career in special education, I became the teacher that I never had. I made sure every single child was seen, that their voice was heard, and in 30 years I can honestly stand here and say that I advocated for every single one of them because I saw myself in them. The restless thinkers, the ones who colored outside the lines, who needed movement and connection rather than correction. Each time a student said, I can't, I remembered how often, and I'm sure my parents would remember how often, I said that too. But every time they succeeded in even a small way, that was helping me heal a part of my own story. I didn't recognize it at the time. But there was a moment that I will never forget. I was in my 20s, 6 months pregnant, and shopping for a baby blanket with my mom. And out of nowhere she said, and I remember it vividly, "It's a shame you can't knit. I worked so hard to teach you. And you resisted every step of the way." And mind you, I was 26. But at least I managed to switch you from being left-handed to right. And in that moment, I was so angry. It really hit a nerve, all of those years of struggling, being misunderstood. And then there I was, standing there with the blanket in my hand, and I realized that was the gift. The struggle, the daydreaming, that's what made all the difference. It's everything that shaped me into who I am today. I'm an idea person. What once looked like failure was just potential kind of finding its form. So when I see somebody today with a deficit, I see possibility. I see a story that hasn't been written. I see an idea. So I used to struggle to control a pencil, and now I see that as a gift. My wandering mind, the ideas that were just too big for the page. But today, the world is my canvas. It truly is. Last January, I left my job, early retirement. I stepped out of the school system into a larger purpose, and I formed Hilltop Communities and an international nonprofit called PATH, promoting arts, teamwork, and hope. I see the red light. But both of them grew, 2 seconds, from the same belief that every person and community deserves a chance to find their purpose and to create something. So no matter where you are in your journey, where there's potential, there's hope. And it always starts with one simple truth. And I really, truly believe this. We're not broken. We're just becoming who we're always meant to be. So sometimes, though, it might feel like a setback, but truly it's just the universe turning us in another direction towards our gift. Thank you for letting me go first. I thought it was girl, but I'm really listening to this. See, I can't help talking. Aren't you glad I wrote it down?
You know, I thank you so much for your story. But I also want to thank the library for, you know, you're in the library after hours, right? And that's because Lisa Lako allowed that to happen. And it was really special to be here, so thank you. Okay, so we're going to pick another person. And it's Craig Roberts.
All right.
Hello, I'm Craig. Now, picture a cold winter night, January 2008. Now, I had a really stressful week, and we're just coming back from happy hour. Doesn't everything always happen at happy hour, right? And The first thing I decided to do was I said I wanted another ice cold beer. But I thought, I better take a shower. Now, living in a 5th floor walk up in New York City, it takes a long time for the water to get hot in your apartment. So I prepared my shower and I thought, I'm gonna hop into the kitchen and get that ice cold beer. And immediately I thought, why am I gonna do that? I want an ice cold beer. I don't want it lukewarm, taking the time, steaming in the shower like a lobster. So I immediately went back into the bathroom, and when I went into the shower, the water had spiked so high that it burned the skin off my foot. So I was like, what's going on? I adjusted my shower, I started to take it, and I realized something's wrong as the pain was happening on the foot. Now, living in this apartment, we didn't have any Neosporin, let alone a Band-Aid. So I jumped out of the shower and I said, hey, Ken, we better go to the emergency room, something's wrong. Well, as soon as I got there, they looked at me and they realized how bad this burn was. So they put me in with this nurse, Kitty Duke. Her name was Kitty Duke. She wasn't even a country singer, but she had a lot of tattoos. And she said, oh, honey, I better give you something because you're going to be in a lot of pain. And she did. She spoke with the attending physician. They came back and they said, Mr. Roberts, we think you better stay here tonight because if that burn gets infected, you're going to have to get a skin graft. And I was like, what the hell? I don't want that. So sure, they gave me some more morphine, and they put me on a gurney to wait for a bed, and they rolled me into the center of the ER. I was right there, front and center. Now imagine it, I'm as high as a kite, my foot looks like Quasimodo, and I'm seeing all these strange people come in. It's an emergency room the Friday after the holiday. Oh, people were coming in. Half of them were intoxicated, some of them didn't know where they were. There was this one French guy, now imagine this, he had this beautiful suit on, impeccably dressed. But his head looked like a horror movie. There was so much blood coming out of his skull, and not a drop was on that suit. And next to me was Rose. Now, she was behind a curtain. And Rose was this older woman, and she had been there a while with her caregiver, and she wasn't having a good time. A lot of moaning and moaning and moaning as the act was going on. Even the French guy said, what is the problem? What is the noise? And I'm like, it's Rose, she's not having a good night. Well, around 2 o'clock in the morning, they come in to attend to Rose. And I hear the nurse tell the caregiver, well, Rose is pretty backed up. We're gonna have to give her an enema. And I thought, oh dear Lord, here I am with Rose and the enema. And they start to give her the enema. The French guy was like, what does that smell? I'm like, it's Rose. She's having an enema. They give Rose the enema and she dies. Clean as a whistle, dead as a doornail. Right? The caregiver comes out, she's all upset. I'm in the middle of all of this, right? The caregiver is calling people, the nurses, the doctors are coming, Rose is gone. The caregiver is calling the relatives, everything's going on. Kitty Duke comes in, she's like, Craig, how are you doing? And I'm crying, it's like, it's Rose, Rose just died. Please get me a bed, get me a bed. So they find a place for me to go, and they roll me upstairs, and everything's fine for that evening. Well, the next day, the male nurse comes in to help me, and he's like, Mr. Roberts, I just want to let you know, you're on a lot of Percocet, you're on a lot of morphine. So if you need an enema, I said, you're not giving me an enema! He looked at me like I was crazy. I said, I will hop to that bathroom on 1 foot, I don't care if my eyes pop out, you are not giving me an enema! Well, they thought I was a little crazy. But you know what I learned from that whole experience? A couple things. Number one, have the beer. Skip the shower, eat your bread, and poop your brains out. Trust me, remember Rose.
Poor Rose. Okay, let's see. Eileen Patterson, track 7.
There's actually more to me than just track 7 times.
Sorry.
No, I'm just
Would you
kidding.
like some water?
No.
Speaking to that mic.
Gotcha. Okay. I am not usually nervous, but I am a nervous wreck right now. And, I didn't think that would happen. So I am the youngest of 6 children in a gregarious Irish brood. My parents were raised in the Bronx in the 30s and the 40s.
They came from very different backgrounds. My mother was raised by a prissy Irish lady who never had a hair out of place or a dust bunny on the floor. My father, on the other hand, came from a raucous household of severe poverty and extreme dysfunction. He was, I might cry, sorry, just a heads up. He was proud of how he turned out despite all of that. He credited my mom with that. They started dating when she was 13 and he was 15. And part of the credit went to the fact that he finagled a way to get out of Dodge as soon as he could. His friends were his world. He referred to himself and his friends as hooligans. They got into quite a bit of trouble. Oh, no, sorry, I'm missing a step. They, typical Bronx city kid, stickball, roof tag, classic growing up in the city kind of activities. And he and the hooligans did get into or come close to trouble quite a lot. There was one story of Johnny No Arms, which we didn't get a lot of detail about. I still don't know all of it, and I don't know if Johnny had arms or not. But he told us all the stories of his childhood, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good were really funny. The bad, we didn't always believe the bad, and the ugly, well, that was an understatement. There was one story of Yolanda Tuzzarelli, and we were sure that that was a made-up name, but he swore that it was a true person. So when he was 16, he was the most proud of this story. When he was 16, he changed the date, his birth date on his birth certificate so that he could get into the Navy when he was 16. And he did. He wound up being the ship's cook during the Korean War. Lots of stories from that era as well. He did his 4 years in the Navy and then married my mom. They had 6 kids in 8 years. Yeah, I had a great childhood. I had a great dad. I had awesome parents. I don't know if it's a classic characteristic of the youngest child of 6 or any family to be the one to ask the questions, but that was me. I was never shy about asking questions. In fact, the others, my siblings, I refer to them as the others, would often push me forward to ask a question that they didn't want to ask. And I asked my dad very often about his stories of his childhood, and he loved to tell them, and they were important. And it was an important part of the connection I had with my dad. We heard the stories our whole lives, all of them. So in February of 2008, after years, I was in my 40s, don't do any math. He was in his mid-70s. I had been asking for years to write his stories down for the benefit of his grandchildren, and he always said, nah, nobody wants to hear those stories. Well, I can tell you what I was wearing the day that I got my mail out of the mailbox, and there was, he lived in Florida, I lived in Warwick, and there was a manila envelope of about 100 handwritten pages. There was the stories. He wrote the stories down. And there was a deal. There was always a deal. My dad was from the Bronx, I might have mentioned that. There was always a deal when it came to my dad. Nobody could know. No one else in the family could know. We were going to work on the book together, including, and potentially especially, my mom. It had to be a secret. And in the message he said, if all is, the last page is written, and if everything is equal, you will have that page one day. So for a couple of years, I would type up what he sent and mail it to him, and he would take notes, and I would ask him questions. Tell us more about this. What about Mom? What's the date on that again? And he would send back the responses to my notes, maybe some comments on my typos, and we came up with the book, and we finished it. It wasn't done. We didn't tell his whole story, but we had a good manuscript. He passed in 2010, and as I prepared for his funeral, heading down to Florida for his funeral, I made copies of the book and I handed them out to my brothers and sisters, and they were shocked. They couldn't believe it. They were really happy. My mom not so much, but everyone else was really happy. And I got to the wake, and his best friend came up to me and said, "Your dad gave this to me a couple of years ago and wanted me to give it to you at his funeral." And it was the last page, as he had promised. And it was probably 2017 when I got a note of text from my oldest brother. And he had finally had the time, the energy, the nerve, whatever it was, to sit down and read the book. And he said, "Thanks for keeping his voice alive." Thank you.
I just had this thought. How many of you have a story about a family member that was awakened by that story? Yeah. Yep. Kendall, class.
Hi. Excuse me 1 second. My name is Kendall. I am going to tell you a story about stories. We've all had 6 degrees of separation moments in our lives, or a chance encounter with someone in an airport. How do we explain some of those moments? How do we think about those moments? Well, I have a lot of those moments in my life, so much so that my friends refer to them as Kendall moments or Kendallisms. And in fact, there's someone in this room who has been part of one of those. You're not in the story though, sorry. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about that, and I'm going to cheat because I got asked to do this a little bit late, so I haven't got it memorized. But let's start with the fact that when I was a teenager, I went to summer camp in Colorado. Had the pleasure of doing that for both my freshman and sophomore summers. And those acquaintances and friendships that I made while in summer camp resulted in a couple of Kendall moments later in life, including I was a mother's helper for a family in Rye, New York, which is where I'm from originally. And the summer of '75, I believe, they asked me to accompany them to Cape Cod, where the grandparents had a home, which I did. I was on the beach at the grandparents' home, and the grandparents had invited another guest that day, and that person came from Massachusetts, someplace in Massachusetts, to where we were on the Cape. And I got talking to the woman from that family. Turns out that she knew and was very good friends with one of the families, the daughter, let's see, Molly Hoagland was her name, who I went to summer camp with in Colorado. Her parents were very good friends with the people that showed up at the house in Osterville, Massachusetts, while I was babysitting for their children. That same trip, I left with the family. We left Cape Cod, and on the way back to home, to Rye, the family decided that they wanted to stop in Hyannis for a brief interlude. I was very excited about that. I loved the Kennedys. I was all about the Kennedys and interested, and knew that that was their stomping grounds. So my employers said, well, you can take a half an hour to go explore Hyannis, and we'll meet you back at the car. So I wandered around Hyannis for a little bit. Wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I decided that I was going to buy a charm for my charm bracelet. And so I found a jewelry shop, and I opened the door to the jewelry shop, and as I walked in the door, I hear, "Why, yes, Mrs. Kennedy, those are real pearls." I stood at the door, and another employee came over and came up to me, and I said, "Is that the Mrs. Kennedy, Mrs. Rose Kennedy?" "Yes," he said, "it is." Holy cow, I was standing there in awe with my knees shaking, much like they are right now, I might say. And I didn't know what to do. I wanted to say something to her, and all I could think of was, "I'm so sorry about your sons," and that seemed woefully inadequate, so I didn't say anything at all. But I left with a silver lobster charm to remind me of that experience, and I've regretted ever since that I didn't say anything to Mrs. Kennedy. That's one story. Let's see. Oh, 2022, Killington, Vermont. I'm in a bar called Slopes. Some of you may know it if you're skiers. And I am listening to the voice of the bartender behind the bar, very strong Boston accent. Well, many of the kids that I met when I was in summer camp were from the Boston area, and I'm still to this day actually friends with a few of them. And so, me being me, I walked up to the bartender and I said, "Are you from Boston?" Well, duh, she sounded so Boston. And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "I know some people from the Boston area. I know people from Hingham and Burlington and Cohasset." And she said, "I know people in Cohasset." You know where this is going. I said, "Do you know the Taylors?" "Howie Taylor? I know Howie Taylor." Same family. Couldn't believe that. Let's see. And on to Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, 2005. How many thousands of people are in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade crowd? I'm with my college roommate. We get talking to the couple that was in front of us. And the woman, I said to her, "So where are you guys from?" And she said, "Oh, we're from upstate New York." Well, all of us on this side of the river know that everybody on the other side of the river thinks of this side of the river as upstate New York. So I said, "Oh shoot, my time is running out." Turns out they were from Middletown, and her boss was my son's best friend's father from Warwick. Yellowstone National Park. This is really the best one. Oh shoot, do I need to stop? I should stop. What's that?
You can break a rule.
Okay, thank you. This is a good one. I'll start with this one. 2010, Yellowstone National Park. I'm with my other half, Dave. We were hiking to the Yellowstone, to the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. You may know that spot. It's an iconic location, beautiful spot. We hiked for an hour and 15 minutes, didn't see a single soul. We're enjoying the view, and up behind, eventually, come two young men, one of whom has a University of Maryland t-shirt on. My oldest son went to the University of Maryland, so there you go. That's the opening line right there, right? "Oh, did you go to University?" Well, shortly thereafter, up come mom and dad, huffing and puffing. Well, we get talking, and they were all from New York. They were from Massapequa, Long Island. So I said, my ex-husband was from Massapequa, Long Island. "Oh, are you from Massapequa?" They asked me. I said, "No, I'm originally from Rye. I live in Warwick now." And the husband goes to her, "Isn't your cousin from Rye?" Her cousin was a classmate of mine from Rye High School. We graduated together. So those are a few of the stories. That was my cheat sheet. I didn't get far away.
So we'll have one more, and then we'll have a 10-minute break, and you'll have time to talk about or reflect on these stories. Mitch Lillian.
Thanks, Becky. Clearly, I don't follow instructions very well.
Hold that mic up.
Point it at your mouth.
Oh, at my mouth?
Yes.
Oh. Clearly, I don't follow instructions very well. I didn't make it for the 5th when
Oh,
we were
don't
supposed to come.
apologize.
And yeah, but I also didn't follow the instructions because I got confused between story time and story share and a day in the life of.
I'm just making sure Nancy doesn't start until he's ready. So why don't you just see what
Come
shows
on, I'm
up?
trying to run out the clock.
Just see what shows up in you.
Keep asking me questions. Keep going, Nancy. Anyhow, my wife Lynn and I
Closer. Closer.
My wife Lynn and I moved to Warwick in 1988. We had raised 3 kids in Warwick. We love Warwick. So that's who we are. I work in the motion picture industry. I started out at a very young age, 16 years old, got a job for the summer. Turned out to be the thing I fit the most. Lynn's stepfather would always say I was a square peg in a round hole in a square peg. Basically, I fit. And I continued working in the motion picture industry, basically all my life. Traveled all over. I can't really remember any notes that I wrote down, but I've started out at a commercial production company, and they were making the transition. The director wanted to work on movies. Ended up going from that to working on movies, and I don't really know what else to say, really. I kind of got lost. I also didn't really know how long 5 minutes was. Yeah, so that's basically my story.
He has lots of stories. All right, so let's take a 5-minute break. The restrooms are over here. And turn to someone and just introduce yourselves.
Make sure our names are
Thank you so much. The interaction was superb. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you so much for taking the time to really chat with someone. So we're going to resume our little storytelling.
It's not little.
Oh, our big storytelling moments. And it looks like Ken Carnes. Thank you, Ken. One of the things that's happening for me is people are coming up to me and saying, Beverly, that mic has to be in your face.
Okay. I'm going on down to Yasgur's farm.
all right.
Gonna join in a rock and roll band. Gonna camp out on the land. Set my soul free. 1969, almost Woodstock. In the summer of 1969, I bought a motorcycle. It was not my first motorcycle, no. I bought my first motorcycle in May of 1967 when I turned 17 years old and got my driver's license. And this motorcycle in 1969 was not my second, nor was it my third or my fourth. I had bought a bunch of motorcycles. But this motorcycle may just have changed my life. You see, the summer before, 1968, I had discovered dirt track motorcycle racing in upstate New York. They were called scrambles. There were races every Sunday in Maybrook or Walden, Millerton, Modena, Monticello, Fishkill. And the first time I went to one of these races, something happened. I fell in love. I fell head over heels in love. In love with motorcycle racing. Dirt track motorcycle racing, I loved everything about it. The smell of that burning motor oil, the roar of the engines. These guys who raced, they were tough, they were rugged. I wanted to be one of them. So what I did was this. Over the course of the winter, 68 to 69, I took one of my bikes, a little Honda, I stripped it, bought some parts, I modified it, I converted it, I turned it into a little racer, and when spring came, I raced. And I liked it. I developed some skills, but truth be told, the bike was not competitive. I knew I wouldn't win on it, so I had my eye out for a real racing bike, and I found a guy selling a factory racer, and I bought it. And I can't help but wonder if buying that motorcycle might not have just nudged the arc of my life a little bit. Or maybe a lot, I don't know. This is what happened. This country girl I knew over in Sussex, you know, just over the border, she's throwing a backpack, a sleeping bag, a bunch of gear in her family's beat up, scratched, dented carry-all. The carry-all was the ugly, utilitarian ancestor to that really fancy, expensive Chevy Suburban. So I say, hey, where are you going? She turns to me, her blue eyes are sparkling. She smiles. I heard about this music festival. It's supposed to be really good. It's in Woodstock, New York. You want to come along? I shake my head. Nah, I just booked my new racing bike. I'm going to the races. So she went to Woodstock. And I went to the motorcycle race. Now I gotta tell you, I had no regrets because I won my first trophy, and man, I had bragging rights amongst all my motorcycle buddies. They looked at me with a newfound level of respect. But these days, as I look back on my life, and I'm doing that more and more, I can't help wonder, how might my life be different? How might it have changed if instead of going to that motorcycle race, I had gone to Woodstock. By the time I got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere was song and celebration. 1969. Almost Woodstock. I could have been cool.
You could have those beautiful blue eyes for a long time. Oh, what about Lisa? Lako.
See if I can do my own microphone properly. My name is Lisa Lako, and I'm going to violate one of the storytelling rules. I know you're supposed to tell a story about yourself, but I think you'll forgive me my storytelling faux pas. It's about my son, who did grow up here in Warwick. And the setting is Cali, Colombia. It's the fall of 2016, and my son Fletcher is teaching under the auspices of a Fulbright scholarship from the U.S. State Department in Cali, Colombia. He's teaching English at a university. And he made his way to Cali, which is a sprawling, enormously spread out city of 2.6 million, so it's geographically very, very large. And he found himself at his first place of living just in a rented room in someone's apartment, which turned out to be on the outskirts of the city. At the time when he made the arrangement, he didn't really know where he was going to land geographically, but he quickly determined that he needed to move to a more central location closer to his university. So he found something after a few weeks and went about moving across this enormous city in a taxi. So he hailed a taxi on the street and loaded up all his luggage. Now he was in Colombia for a year, so he had quite a bit of luggage. So some of it went in the back seat with him, and the rest of it was piled in a heap on the passenger side in the front next to the taxi driver, and off they went. And so this can be a very long ride across the city. They struck up a great conversation. This taxi driver was very evidently quite engaged in the world. He was following U.S. politics. This is the fall of 2016. We're coming up on the presidential election. He's an avid Trump supporter. He's also a poet. And every time they get to a stoplight or a stop sign in the city, he grabs up his phone and taps it and reads another poem to my son Fletcher. And Fletcher thinks this is awesome. What an incredible cultural experience I'm having. I'm speaking in Spanish with this local fellow, and he's a Trump supporter, and we've got poetry going, and this is just incredible. And so Fletcher continues the conversation. He's like, have you ever been to the USA? And the man replies, no, I haven't. Fletcher said, have you ever thought of going? Yes, I have. Well, where would you like to go? Fletcher's thinking, Miami, which is a common destination for folks from South America, a lot of expat Latin families and so forth. No, not Miami, not Washington, not LA, not Boston, not Seattle. No. So Fletcher said, well, tell me where is it that you would like to go in the States? And this man paused, and he gets this very sort of serene look on his face, according to Fletcher, and says in reverential tones, I want to go most to Warwick, New York. Now, Fletcher was just struck dumb for a moment. What? He thinks the man's pulling his leg because, again, his luggage is to the man's right. Maybe he's looking at the luggage tag and saying, I'm going to just pull this kid's leg. No, he means it. Warwick, New York. He said, do you know about Warwick, New York? Fletcher says, I'm from Warwick, New York. Now, at this point, Fletcher thought the man's going to be dumbfounded. Here we are in very remote part of Colombia. Cali is in the southwest of Colombia. You can't get there very easily. You have to fly multiple places. It's remote and it's huge. And how is it that Fletcher gets into a taxi with the one taxi driver in Cali, Colombia that knows about Warwick, New York? So he said, well, how is it that you know about Warwick, New York? The man is completely, he's completely unaware of how extraordinary this is, that he's met someone from this tiny little place. He doesn't realize how small Warwick is in the scheme of things. And he said, well, I'll tell you. And he grabs his phone again, and he taps. And he said, well, but if you're from Warwick, surely you know this man. He turns around the phone, and overdubbed in Spanish, there is Michael Sweeten opening the Jehovah's Witness Center in Sterling Forest. It turns out this gentleman is a Jehovah's Witness. He's a follower, and his live stream was to make his way to Warwick, New York, to the Jehovah's Witness headquarters here. So if you want to think about this in just sort of a meta perspective, it's really a very, very small world, isn't it?
Unbelievable, right? That's great. Madeline, who we know.
Welcome to Orange County, where the metro meets the wild, and we vie to have the most vehicle deer crashes in the state, about 1,500 a year. My first encounter with a deer was on January 3rd, 2000. As I closed up the Florida Public Library that evening, it was 0 degrees. I headed south on Route 94, and I was almost to the outskirts of the village when a deer bolted between two little houses on my right and smashed into my headlight. I slammed on the brakes. I felt the jolt of that impact in my bones and in my brains, and the deer flew through the air, landed on the roof, kicked out the rear window, bounced off the trunk, and landed on the pavement in a flurry of thrashing legs. I pulled myself out of the car. What just happened? A pickup truck roared up, and two guys in camo gear jumped out. Hey lady, you want that deer? You know, 'cause you hit it, it's yours. Another car pulled up. A silver-haired gentleman got out. He was on his way home to Greenwood Lake. He had one of those new cell phones. He called 911 for me. When the trooper arrived, he didn't bother getting out of his car. He just sat behind the wheel, filling out a form on a clipboard. I stood by the open window with the traffic and the wind whipping behind me. He was very annoyed. He told me that the deer couldn't be moved until it had died, and that he was not going to shoot it because discharge of a weapon required another state trooper as a witness, and no one was available that night. It took me years to realize that his leisurely approach to filling out paperwork was to allow the deer enough time to die. It took even longer for me to understand that his annoyance probably stemmed from the same thing happening over and over again to him. I drove home and my husband said to me, "Why did you hit it?" "I didn't see it," I said. "Well, you weren't driving defensively." "There was nothing I could do." Sounds like careless driving to me. My second encounter with a deer, I was cruising along Pulaski Highway on my way home again, and a deer ran out and smashed into the car door behind me. My husband said, "What are you doing? You're not driving defensively. This is carelessness." My third encounter with a deer, I was just coming down Figgles Hill on County Route 1, just before the cornfields by the flats, and a deer bolted out from the side and smacked into the front of the car and bounded away, just like the one before. Because you see, they don't always die. Sometimes they just wreck your car and run away. Now, you would think that 3 encounters would be enough, and you would be wrong. We were coming home from shopping in Middletown on Lower Road in New Hampton. We had just passed Soon's Orchards a couple miles before, going up a slight incline, and a deer just charged from the side of the road, and I had this millisecond of seeing the deer from nose to tail, its length matched perfectly with the width of my little car. And then the middle of the deer and the middle of my car smacked together, and the deer bounded off and ran away. And we sat there motionless in the dark, not saying anything. My husband was in shock. And from his seat behind the wheel, he said, "I didn't see it." "I know. There was nothing I could do to avoid it." "I know." "It's not my fault." "I know." "You're just going to keep on saying that, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. Yes, I am." And I thought, now you know, because there is nothing in your education, your experience, your background, your skills that can prepare you to suddenly meet a deer in the dark, or the dusk, or the dawn, or the day, anytime. And you just have to have a little humility and grace and a sense of humor, and understand that you have had a collision with nature, and you are lucky to be alive. And so, as John Donne said so many years ago, "Send not to know for whom the deer aims. It aims for thee."
Mary. Bono. You can take that off, Mary, if you want.
I think I'll keep it on. I'm Mary. I'm an artist, not a painter. More of a sculptor.
Raise it up a little.
Raise it up.
You're still there.
I'm more of a handy person. I made a pretty good living as an illustrator, a three-dimensional illustrator for a while. I would get an assignment and put in a sketch, and then I would build something or sketch it, or sculpt it, or even crochet it. And then I would take a photograph of reproduction. Now there are a lot of artists in Provincetown, in Warwick, sorry, I am nervous. There are a lot of artists here. And 4 times a year, we get an invitation from the library to put our work upstairs all the way around the room. And there's no sketch involved, there's no jury, but there is a theme. And sometimes I've got something that'll fit the theme. But most of the time, more of the time than not, the illustrator brain of mine will light up and I will make something new for the show. This happened last year. The theme for the summer was By the Sea. And I'm walking around my studio and I see this little shoebox that says beach bottles. And sure enough, there are 3 little bottles that I picked up when I lived in Provincetown ages ago. They're nice and frosted from rolling around in the bay. And there's something else in the box that I don't remember. It's a piece of stone, a slice of agate. It's about yay wide, and it's kind of gray-blue with swirly white lines going through it, and it's kind of sandy on the edges. It looks like a piece of shoreline with the waves coming in. Well, now I am up and running. So I print out a nice old map of Provincetown, 1890, about the same age as the bottles, and I mount them against it and put the piece of stone underneath, frame it all up, bring it into the library right on time. Now, a couple days later, my husband Glenn and I head up to the Adirondacks. We're going to have a vacation with his brothers, Brian and his wife Lily, and Ken and his husband Stuart. So I show Ken a picture on my phone of the piece, and he's kind of hinting that he'd like to have it after the show is over. So, okay. But after the show is over, it ends up on a shelf in my studio with a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, this last summer, the brothers decide to come and stay in Warwick for the week. So when I show Ken the actual piece, he says, yeah, he definitely wants it. Okay. But he and Stu are going to be on the road for the next couple of months. So I said, I'll bring it out at Christmas time. Well, come September, I get an email from Ken. We're back. Why don't we celebrate Glenn's and Layla's big birthdays out here? Now, Layla's their daughter. Ken and Stu adopted 2 little babies back in 2000, a boy and a girl. Now, Glenn is about to turn 75, and Layla will be 25 3 days later. So, yeah, great idea, we'll come. So, I bring the P-Town piece out, and Ken decides where he wants to put it, right over the counter between the living room and the kitchen. There's a painting there, but he's going to take it down, and meantime, he puts my piece up against the wall on the counter. And we don't see Layla, we won't see her till dinner time because she's got a job in town. And her brother, Darius, well, he's in the Army, so we're not going to see him at all. He actually turns 25 today. Now, where does that time go? I remember feeding these 2 baby food in side-by-side high chairs. And we would see them as toddlers, as kids, and playing and squabbling. And one time we were out there, and Layla was having this major meltdown. She's maybe 7 or 8, and she is pissed off and bawling in her room. So I go in, I put my arm around her, and I say, it must be hard being the only girl in a house full of boys. And she says, yes! Well, now she's a young lady, full of beans, looking to get her master's degree and get her career going. Well, she doesn't see my piece sitting on the counter until we're done with the cakes and the candles and happy birthdays. And when she does see it, she says, "Oh, I love Provincetown." And I say, "I didn't know you were even there." And she says, "Yeah, we used to go out for Family Week. And it was the first time I felt normal." Oh, I laugh, I get it. And I tell her about Cross-Dressers Weekend. I'm in one of the local bars out there chatting with this middle-aged guy in a frilly dress, and I buy him a drink, and he starts to cry. So she nods, she gets it. Well, next morning, I'm the first one up as usual, and I see that Ken has taken down the painting and put my piece up in its place. And I stand there a minute and look at it and I think, yeah, it looks right at home. Right at home.
Thank you. Danny. Let me see.
All right. How y'all doing? All right, I'm gonna take it off here because I'm just too tall for that. All right. So, my story starts with when I was 7 years old. And I was in my bed at night, and I had one of those carousel lamps that as it turned would flash the light of horses going around the room. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You ever have one of those? It's a dark light, tucked in, happy in my bed. And one of the scariest things I ever thought would happen to me in my life happened. This small pitter-patter sound, very small, came to my attention because the room was quiet. And I felt something light on my blanket. But the light kept going around the room, going on and off. And I saw its 8 legs coming up my duvet towards my face, but then I didn't see it. And then it was closer, and it was closer. And I froze. To that point in my young life, that was the scariest thing, and I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't ask for help. Flash forward to 14 years old, and I'm at a party with my family. And the truly most scariest thing ever happened to me. I was a beautiful young kid. I did a lot of modeling. And that led people, some not so great people, to believe that it was okay to treat me a certain way. Well, this man pinned me against a wall. And I realized I had that same fear. That frozen moment where I couldn't breathe, I couldn't yell. I had family I trusted in the other room, just like my mother in her bed that night, the spider was on my bed. If I would have yelled, somebody would have come running, just like my mother would have with that spider. But I couldn't yell. I managed to push him off of me, and in my life, that happened numerous times. So one day I became a mother of one of the most beautiful children I've ever seen. I'm sure most mothers feel that way. But now I became a helicopter mom, because I never wanted anyone to treat my child the way I was treated. I didn't want my child to ever know what it felt to freeze and not be able to scream for me in the other room. So I told my child repeatedly, if you're ever scared, yell for me. If you ever have someone come near you that shouldn't be, scream. To this day, my child's 13 years old, and we're at a mall, and they want to have a little bit of distance now. I'm gonna go over there, Mom, I'm gonna look at that. You won't be able to see me, but I'm right here. Yell if anybody comes near you. I'll be right there. My child and I have been through some extreme circumstances over the last few years, and I have been very proud of my child for showing courage in the face of a lot of strenuous things. But we got this apartment now, and it's not the best apartment in the world. It's somebody's basement that we converted, doesn't have a kitchen. My child stopped sleeping in my bed and moved into their own room. And I told my kid, if you need me, just yell. Well, I was in the bathroom, probably one of the most vulnerable places you can be, and a giant black spider crawled against the floor along the wall. I have some severe arachnophobia. And I'm alone with my kid, so I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? And I screamed. I'm really wounded. Well, my kid came running. Without hesitation, my kid picked the shoe up, killed the spider. And it was a moment that I realized, without a doubt, maybe being a helicopter mom wasn't such a bad idea because I raised one fierce child. And I broke a chain that I found out later my mother had passed down to me. And her mother passed to her. And now I don't worry about my kid or my grandkids or whatever comes next.
So that ends our presenters, but it opens up the opportunity for anyone here in the audience who would like to tell a story. Is there anyone here who would like to tell a story? Great.
Thank you. I actually came with a couple of stories to tell tonight, but the 5-minute limit is imposing. So I'm just going to tell a quick story. I'm a musician, and I'm a freelancer, but for a number of years I played in a particular band, and we had a website, and I was listed on the website. My name is Barry Weisenfeld, not the most common name, and my last name is spelled not like most Weisenfelds spelled. There are not a lot of Weisenfelds, fewer of them, small percentage spell it my way. And one day, for reasons that I don't recall, because it was years ago, I Googled my own name. And how many of us have done that? Yeah, okay, good. And lo and behold, a Barry Weisenfeld shows up. It's just a line listing, under the item list, spelled my way, my exact name spelled my way. And he's a professor of music at McGill University in Montreal. I said, well, that's just a remarkable coincidence. Another Barry Weisenfeld spelled my way in the music business. I also teach music, so there's that. And I just let it ride, but it bugged me. It just sat in my consciousness, and eventually it got the better of me, and I called McGill. And I spoke to the music department, and I said, I'd like to speak to Professor Barry Weisenfeld, please. And the young person at the other end of the phone had no idea who this was. And long story short, that Barry had retired years ago, perhaps deceased, I don't know, but they didn't know who he was anymore. Okay, We fade out, we fade back in, and I just let it go to rest, the mystery of life. And one day I get an email from the leader of this band who actually lived in Albany, so he didn't just knock on my door. He sent me an email and he said, "Hey there, I just got this email and I thought you'd like to read it, so here it is attached." And the email began this way. His name, the band leader's name was Jimmy, and the email began this way. "Hi Jimmy, you don't know me, but I see that you have a Barry Weisenfeld in your band. My father was Barry Weisenfeld, and he taught music at McGill University. I'm just wondering if there's any connection. Would you mind putting me in touch with your Barry Weisenfeld?" Her name is Andrea Weisenfeld. She lives in Vancouver. We refer to each other as cousins. We've become pretty close over the years, and we're afraid to do a DNA test because it may show we're unrelated. We prefer the fantasy of being cousins, and that's how we refer to each other, and we're in touch. And it just speaks to what a small but odd world we live in. That's it.
Anyone else? You don't look wimpy. I want to try to tell a story. How about that? You're timing me.
Point to mic.
I have to follow the same rules. Okay. So it's 2021. I'm in my kitchen preparing lunch. I met a woman in town maybe a couple weeks earlier, and I invited her to come to my house for lunch. So I opened the door after she knocked, and I see her looking around, and she turns to me and she says, "I've been here before. I've never met this woman before." I'm like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've been here before." And then she steps around and looks around the outside of the house. She said, "Actually, I came here and picked up a cat box, or, like a traveling cage." And I looked at her in disbelief. I said, "I've never had a cat." "Are you sure?" And she was absolutely sure. So she came in, had lunch, we had a lovely time. But after she left, it really disturbed me that she thought she had picked up a cat cage. Several nights later, I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, I did have a cat." It totally freaked me out. So that was 2021. 2008, my husband and I were in Philadelphia. We both were from Philadelphia. We often went to Philadelphia. It was Thanksgiving. We had a friend who was seriously ill. In fact, we thought she would die. We stopped by her house. She starts talking to us about the need to have a bone marrow transplant, and she had to have this bone marrow, whatever, a very serious situation where she needed someone to take her cat. And I don't know, during the conversation, we were there for maybe an hour and a half. She kept bringing up her cat and said, she couldn't find a home. And I basically was ignoring it, honestly. And then at some point, she just point blank said, "Would you take my cat?" And I heard myself say yes. I was not interested in taking home a cat. So we're in the car, my husband and I, we're driving back to back to New York. He is furious. Like, why did you ask for that cat? And I said, I'm not going to tell a person who's dying that it's inconvenient for me to take their cat. I'm just not going to do that. He says, "You know what's going to happen." I said, "What?" "I'm going to take care of the cat." I said, "That's not true." He said, "It's always true." we have a screeching cat in the back. The argument goes on for 2.5 hours. We get home, and of course, he was exactly right. He created a little cat door for the cat to go in and out of the porch. He started taking care of feeding the cat. You know, everything a cat needed, he was there supporting. I would come home from work and the cat would be sitting with him as he was reading, because he was retired at the time. I didn't like the cat. And oftentimes, the cat would hiss at me when I would walk by. Well, that was in 2008. Within a short time after that, my husband had died from a very severe aortic aneurysm. That's a whole other story, but there was me and the cat. And I remember coming home and the cat would be in the chair that I often saw he and my husband in. Or it started coming into the bedroom, sleeping where my husband would ordinarily sleep. It had never come into our bedroom before. And it dawned on me that the cat was really mourning, and I was mourning. And I suddenly saw the cat differently. I felt like, wow, we're both in this place of missing him. And so I decided, it's not a decision, it was just that I really looked forward to creating this relationship with the cat that I'd never imagined was possible. One evening, after many evenings of sitting upstairs with the cat, watching TV, the cat would sit on the adjoining couch. One night, I noticed there was this intensity that I was feeling that was a little concerning. And when I turned to look, pulling myself away from the TV screen, I saw the cat charging up in the air and with teeth bare, claws bare, and attacked me in my chest. And I jumped up screaming, blood, the cat was screaming, I was screaming, and suddenly whatever relationship I thought I was having or developing with this cat suddenly turned into terror. I was afraid to come home. I was afraid to be home and have a door open. I was constantly in fear of this cat attacking me. I started talking to my very liberal friends about their love of animals and what I needed to do. And all of their suggestions were not something I was up for, like getting cat therapy. After many months of really living in terror, I decided I had to take it into my own hands what to do with this cat. And so I started looking through the yellow pages. There were yellow pages at one point. And I found an SPCA in Port Jervis. And I felt like shameful that I was giving this cat away after all the advice I had been given by my pet-loving friends. But I felt it was far enough away that nobody would see me taking the cat there. But one of the things I had struggled with is how do I get the cat in the cage? And when I tried to do that, the cat would attack me and I would be terrorized by it. But one day I just decided I had to do it. I wrapped my arms up and I got the cat in the cage. I drove the cat to Port Jervis. When I filled out the form, it asked me, was there any signs of the cat attacking anyone or being fierce with anyone? And I realized as I was filling out that form, and when I got to those hard questions, I realized in my mind I could say, it really wasn't my cat. When they were saying, does your cat? Well, it's not my cat. And I just said no. Well, I'm driving away and I'm just horrified that I didn't ask all the questions. What would happen to the cat? What is the procedure of dealing with cats that have problems? I didn't want to know, I was too fearful. And I knew I couldn't take the cat home. And as I'm driving back home and thinking about my friends saying, whatever happened to your cat, Beverly? Or I also had the thought, uh-oh, next lifetime, you're going to be a cat. And then I just closed the door. So I want to, if there's no one else who has a story to tell, I want to invite you to consider our next storytelling event, which is in the spring. We do it twice a year. And think about, and actually, if you don't have a story now, start living your life for those stories. Because they're there. And thank you for coming out tonight.